Psalms chapter 84 and verse 10. For a day in thy courts is better than 1,000. So one day in the kingdom of heaven is better than 1,000 of your best days on this side, man. Let me repeat that again. One single day in the kingdom of heaven is better than 1,000 of your best days on this side, man. Okay? Where things were better for you. Moments that you can reminisce on and say, yeah, that was a good day. The kingdom of heaven blows it out the park, man. It blows it out the water. Just one day. Not to mention, the Heavenly Father, He's going to stretch out the time. He's going to expand the time so you can enjoy your immortality. You can enjoy your life. And the Lord said in Wisdom of Solomon, He created the Israelite man to be an image of his own eternity, man. We're going to be a likeness of his own eternity, man. We're going to be many most highs, man. We're going to be many most highs. Okay? God's on earth under Yahweh Shemiah Shah.
I have said, ye are gods, and all of you are children of the Most High.
And also what's going to make us gods? These laws, statutes, commandments, and us judging by the laws, statutes, commandments, but also these laws being in our inward parts, making us those perfect judges. Not to mention, we experience these different reincarnations in this wicked flesh, so we know how to judge the flesh. We know how to judge this body because we've been in this body many times. Okay? But once again, the kingdom of heaven is going to be patterned after the mind of Yahweh Shemiah Shah, man. A righteous paradigm.
Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done, in earth as it is in heaven.
All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I would like to give all praise and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shah, Bahashem, Kakwadash. Double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples to his younger brothers. And peace and blessings and salutation to the hopeful lake out there pushing his word and truth and in sincerity across the four winds in the name of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shah. Pushing to get up out of here. Shalom to the hopeful lake, the believers, the listeners who have came back to the obedience of the scriptures through faith in Yahweh B'Shem Al Shai. All right. And what I want to get into today is a continuation in the book of 2 Kings. All right. The 24th chapter. All right. And what we're going to go into is the beginning of the fall of the southern kingdom. All right. Which the Lord, he had his mind made up that he was going to punish, all right, the southern tribes. Because they went heavy into paganism. Okay, they went heavy into paganism. And even when you go here to the book of Jeremiah, chapter 3, because really, when you read 2 Kings, the 23rd chapter, and you see how much that Josiah, had to remove and tear down, all those pagan shrines and idols and statues. And, Jay was wilding. The southern kingdom, especially, with Manasseh, okay, because his name comes up a lot. All right, King Manasseh and his son Amon, they just went all the way there. They went into child sacrifice and everything. Okay, now, let's go here to Jeremiah 3:1. Okay, because Jeremiah was one of the prophets. Okay, that was around, before, Jake, all right, went into captivity. He was warning Jake, all right, to chill, Well, Jake, hey, Jake do what they do best, man. What the hell they want to do, you know. So this is Jeremiah 3:1. It says, "They say if a man put away his wife, and she go from him and become another man's, shall he return unto her again? Shall not their land be greatly polluted? But thou hast played the harlot with many lovers. Yet return again to me, said the Lord Yahweh Bashim Al Shai." Because Jake had went after many guys. Okay, so the Lord is like, look, if a man put his woman away and she deal with another man, well, her first husband that put her away, okay, it's highly unlikely that that man will even consider taking her back after being with another man. Okay, but the Lord is like, look, y'all played, all right, y'all committed, adultery with many lovers, and I'm begging you to come back. You see, that was the stance of the Lord, and that was the way that the Lord showed His mercy. Okay, He was like, look, as a man, you put your woman away, and she dealt with another man, you wouldn't even consider that, and that was the standard back then. That was a standard because virginity was prized. Back then. Okay, it was a common thing for women to only deal with one man back then. It was a much marriage in a much more pure form. Okay, so the Lord, which He charged, all right, us with what? Spiritual adultery, spiritual fornication. Okay, with all these different gods, that we, went after, man, and the Lord was still begging us to return. And that's the Lord's mercy. Remember, the northern tribes had 208 years, to get it together. Okay, and the southern tribes had close to 300. Okay, let's look that up real quick. How long? 20. The time of Solomon in the Babylonian captivity. All right, so it says from the first building of the temple unto the captivity of Babylon are 419 years and a half. So they say it was 419 years, all right, between Solomon building the temple, okay, and Jake going into captivity under the Babylonians, man. Okay, so the Lord had ample mercy on Jake. What Jake wanted to do, they was just determined to do what they wanted to do. Okay, now, it's Jeremiah 3:6. Now, this was the time of Josiah, so Jeremiah was warning, okay, even during the time of Josiah. It says, "The Lord said also unto me in the days of Josiah the king, hast thou seen that which backslide Israel have done? She is gone up upon every high mountain and under every green tree, and there have played the harlot," speaking of the northern tribes. Okay. "And I said, after she had done all these things, turn down to me, but she returned not. And her treacherous sister Judah saw it." Okay, because the southern kingdom saw, the idolatry of the northern tribes. Okay, and what did they do? Okay, what did the southern kingdom do? Then they seen Assyrians come take them captive, and they understood why they went into captivity was because of idolatry, man. It says, "And I saw when for all the causes whereby backsliding Israel committed adultery, I had put her away." Yes, He used the Assyrians to remove them, okay, from the land. It says, "And given her a bill of divorce, yet her treacherous sister Judah feared not, but went and played the harlot also," man. Judah went into idolatry, man, just as the northern tribe. That's why, no tribe can say, well, we're blameless. No, all tribes went into idolatry, man. Okay, and you always had a remnant, that was faithful. Okay, but all tribes were tainted. Okay, with idolatry, man. So one, the northern can't boast against the southern can't boast against the northern kingdom, because all tribes, dabble into that paganism, man. Okay, idolatry, spiritual harlots. All right. Now, when you go back to 2 Kings 24, let's go 2 Kings 24:1. Let's read in NLT. It says, during Joachim's reign, King Nebuchadnezzar. Okay, so now this is when Nebuchadnezzar comes on the scene, the Babylonian king of Babylon invaded the land of Judah. Joachim surrendered and paid him tribute for 3 years. All right, but then, rebelled. Then the Lord sent bands of Babylonian, Aramean, Moabite, and Ammonite raiders against Judah to destroy it, just as the Lord had promised through his prophets, man. So the Lord was just using these nations as a whipping stick. Okay, on the southern tribes, man. Okay, they was rebelling against the Lord. They was rebelling against, Babylon, whom the Lord set up, as a superpower at the time. Okay, it's just rebelling against everything. All right, and the Lord just continued to punish them, man. All right, we're gonna go into those invasions of Nebuchadnezzar as well. It says these disasters happened to Judah because of the Lord's command. He had decided to banish Judah from his presence because of the many sins of Manasseh, man, which Manasseh went hard, into the culture of Canaan, the idolatry of Canaan, man, which was, homosexuality, bestiality, sacrifice of children. He was wilding, man. Temple prostitutes, male and female. Okay, and then he did all these things in Jerusalem, man. And the Lord was pissed at Manasseh, man. It says, who had filled Jerusalem with innocent blood, the Lord would not forgive this. The rest of the events of Joachim's reign and all his deeds are recorded in the book of the history of the kings, of Judah. When Joachim died, his son, Joachim, became the next king. And it says, the king, of Egypt did not venture out of his country after that, for the king of Babylon captured the entire area formerly claimed by Egypt, from the brook, of Egypt to the Euphrates River, because Pharaoh Necho, the kingdom of Judah was under, the Egyptian, jurisdiction. Egypt had, began to rule Judah, as a vassal. They had incorporated Judah as a vassal under Pharaoh Necho, and he put a puppet king in. He took one of Josiah's sons hostages, and he put the other one, as a puppet leader and a tributary to Egypt. But when Babylon came on the scene and began to invade, Judah, the southern kingdom, then Egypt fell back, and now, Judah was tributary to the Babylonians. And this was during those first two invasions. We're gonna break those invasions down in a minute, but let's read this. 2 Kings 24:8 said Joachim was 18 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 3 months. His mother was Nahashta, the daughter of Elnathan, from Jerusalem. Joachim did what was evil in the Lord's sight, just as his father had done. So, at this point, it's just wicked king after wicked king. And then let's say it's just gonna get to the point where the Lord just gonna completely end, the southern kingdom. It said during Jehoiakim's reign, the officers of King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon came up against Jerusalem and besieged it. Nebuchadnezzar himself arrived at the city, during the siege. Then King Joachim, along with the queen mother, his advisors, his commanders, and his officials surrendered to the Babylonians. In the 8th year of Nebuchadnezzar's reign, he took Joachim prisoner. As the Lord Yahweh Shema Shai had said beforehand, Nebuchadnezzar carried away all the treasures from the Lord's temple and the royal's palace. He stripped away all the gold objects, all right, that King Solomon of Israel had placed in the temple. King Nebuchadnezzar took all of Jerusalem captive, including all the commanders of the best of the soldiers, craftsmen, and artisans, 10,000 in all. Only the poorest people were left in the land. Nebuchadnezzar led King Joachim away as a captive to Babylon, along with the queen mother, his wives, and officials, and all the Jerusalem elites. And it says queen mother, but it was just the mother of Joachim. All right, because we didn't have, queen mothers. That was a thing of the heathen. It's just a mother. But sometimes the NLT, it referred to the women of Israel like the heathen women, as queen mothers. There was the heathen kingdom, not of Israel. All right. So he also exiled 7,000 of the best troops and the 1,000 craftsmen and artisans, all of whom were strong and fit for war. Okay. So then the king of Babylon installed Mattaniah, Jehoiakim's uncle, as the next king. So now Babylon put a puppet king up that was tributary to them. And he changed, all right, Mattaniah's name to Zedekiah. Okay. Zedekiah was 21 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 11 years. His mother was Hamutal, the daughter of Jeremiah from Libnah. But Zedekiah did what was evil in the Lord's sight, just as Joachim had done. Then it said these things happened because of the Lord's anger against the people of Jerusalem and Judah, until he finally banished them from his presence and sent them into exile. Zedekiah rebelled against the king of Babylon. So now, okay, you got Zedekiah. He rebels against the king of Babylon. Okay, and when you go here real quick, just to and we're gonna go ahead and go into chapter 25 as well, finish it out. So when you go here, okay, so Pharaoh Necho, just dealing with him, okay, we read him in the 23rd chapter. This is 2 Kings 23 and 29 through 30. Pharaoh Necho is described as going up to fight a group at Carchemish in modern-day Syria, and King Josiah of Judah goes out to confront him. During that confrontation, King Josiah is killed in Megiddo. After Josiah's death, Necho exerts influence over Judah. Okay, he has Judah as a vassal. He removes Josiah's son Jehoaz, all right, from the throne. After only 3 months, he installs Eliakim, another of Josiah's son, as king, remaining, all right, renaming him Joachim. Okay, so Egypt, had influence, over the throne of Judah. Okay, for a short while. Okay, and then you had Nebuchadnezzar. All right, which Nebuchadnezzar, this is where you get, the Chaldeans. Okay, when you read the book of Jeremiah and speak about the Chaldeans, Nebuchadnezzar came from, that dynasty of the Chaldeans, which was known for what? Their astrology. Now, when you read, it says, yes, Nebuchadnezzar was a Chaldean, and his kingdom Babylon was known for a deep involvement in astrology, divination, and various forms of magic and sorcery. All right, though it's not accurate to say he ruled through witchcraft or astrology in a literal or political sense. Okay, so the Chaldeans were known for what their astrology, their divination, their magic and sorcery. Okay, and the elites, okay, in the daughter of Babylon are those Chaldeans. Okay, everything that we see happening, man, these devils are aligned heavy with astrology, divination, magic, and sorcery. And ultimately, this comes from the serpent. Let's get there real quick. All right, and when you go back to Genesis. All right, what was the serpent known for? Okay, showing you that Esau Edom is, he's an original OG, man, when it comes to witchcraft. Okay, after the flood, Ham picked it up. All right, and then eventually Esau came back into power, and he got it back from Ham. Okay, the sexual rituals and astrology and divinations. Okay, the fact Genesis 3, so like we always get it, but we gotta link these things up in the spirit, man. Okay, it says reading the KJV. So you go to Genesis 3:1. Okay, it says, now the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field which the Lord power had made. And he said unto the woman, yeah, have the Most High said, you shall not eat of every tree of the garden. Okay, so when you go to this word serpent, you go to the root word. Okay, which is the root word. You go to it in the all right, which is nakash. Okay, which is nakash in the Hebrew, and what it goes into. All right, it says to practice divination, divine. Okay, to learn by experience, to diligently observe. Okay, and that was what astrology. They were deep into it. Okay, the stars, the constellation, the moons. They was heavy into it. It says practice fortune telling, take as an omen. Okay, the practice of divination to observe the signs of omens. So when you go into the Chaldeans, okay, in which this is, during the Neo-Babylonian Empire. So like, let's go back to the chat real quick. So when you go to the chat and you go into Nebuchadnezzar, which he was from, the family of the Chaldeans, it says it said Nebuchadnezzar II reigned from 605 to 562 BCE, was the most famous king of the Neo-Babylonian Empire, which was founded by his father Nabopolassar, a Chaldean tribal leader. The Chaldean were a Semitic people who settled in southern Babylon, modern-day Iraq, and rose to power in the 7th century BCE. Over time, Chaldean became synonymous with Babylonian, especially in the Bible. All right. It says Babylon was a center of ancient astronomy and astrology. The Chaldeans were known for tracking stars and planets and interpreting omens. You see the same thing we just read about the serpent. Okay. You see? So America being the daughter of Babylon, all right, and the elites being the Chaldeans, they're into the same things today. Okay. It says the book of Daniel, especially Daniel 1 and 2, portrays Nebuchadnezzar relying on magicians, enchanters, sorcerers, and Chaldeans to interpret his dreams and advise Daniel 2 and 2. Okay, it says the wise men were part of the royal advisory class, and their methods often included astrological and occult practices. Okay, so these double, all right, today, you see, they rule, okay, the world, especially here in America, which they rule out of America. Okay, and you best believe that there's magicians, enchanters, and sorcerers. Okay, all through Hollywood, all through the music industry, all in sports, all in big corporation and big tech, all in the school, all in the architecture, man. Okay, it's full of dark magic and enchantments and sorcery, man. You see, so this was going on, heavy during that time. Daniel was in the midst of it. Okay, when you go here, because you had 3 different invasions, okay, of Babylon under Nebuchadnezzar. All right. So you go here, it says the first invasion, said three major invasions of Judah by Babylon of Nebuchadnezzar. After the battle of Carchemish, Nebuchadnezzar asserted dominance over Judah. Okay, so after Babylon, you know, uh, begins to dominate their region, they would defeat Egypt. Okay, and it says they began dominance over Judah. All right, King Joachim becomes his vassal. Daniel and other nobles are taken to Babylon. All right, Daniel chapter 1, verses 1 through 6. This marks the first deportation. So Daniel was taken with their first batch when they took the royals, and this fulfills the prophecy that was given to Hezekiah. Isaiah told him that his seed was going to go into captivity unto Babylon, you know. So they came and invaded and they took, the royal seed, the royal houses, okay, out of Judah and took them to Babylon. And Daniel was caught in that batch. Okay. Now, when you go to this one, the second one, which we just read about, because these are the first two invasions that we're reading about in First Kings, Second Kings 2:24. All right, these are the first two invasions. Okay, the third invasion we're going to read about in in chapter 25. It says, after Joachim rebels, Nebuchadnezzar invades again. King Joachim, all right, surrenders. 10,000 people are deported, including Ezekiel. So Ezekiel is caught up in this deportation. Okay, so you had 8 years to pass by. So 8 years or 7 years after 8 years after Daniel, okay, is taken into captivity. Then Ezekiel is taken into captivity. Now Ezekiel, he was amongst, the coming, people. Okay, he was amongst the coming people. All right, in the Babylonian captivity, and Daniel, he was in the courts of the kings. He worked his way up. The Lord exalted him. Okay, to third in charge of the Babylonian Empire. Ezekiel, he will be amongst, all right, the common people, all right, and they both had their portion of prophecy, man. Okay, they both had a lot. Okay, and it says the third invasion was in 586. So you have 9 years later. Okay, it will be the last invasion in which Zedekiah rebels. Okay, Jake is just hard headed all the way around. Jake wasn't happy until the Lord just destroyed the whole kingdom. It says Babylon invades, destroys Jerusalem and the temple. Most people are deported or killed. Marks the final fall of Judah. So Judah final fall was in 587 BC. Okay, which they was allowed to come back under the Medo-Persian Empire. Okay, rebuild a second temple. Have some type of autonomy. Then eventually, fall again under the Romans. And we haven't been back since then. So you go to the prophets during that time. All right, you had Jeremiah. He prophesied before and during. Okay, he prophesied in Judea. Okay, warned the Babylonian judgment remained in Jerusalem after the destruction. You had Daniel. You had Ezekiel. During. Okay, the exile. Okay, which I say Daniel. He was in the Babylonian courts. Okay, of the kings of the nobles, and Ezekiel was among the exiles in Babylon. In Babylon. Okay, and then right after you had Obadiah, Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi. That was post. That was after the return. Okay, from Babylon. Obadiah. He was shortly after the fall of Jerusalem. He prophesied against Edom for betrayal of Judah. For their part in helping. Okay, the Babylonians take us down. Obadiah addressed that. In his ministry. Okay, so let's go back. So now we're at the 25th chapter. Okay, and this is their third captivity, their third and final blow. that the Lord will give, okay, to the southern kingdom. All right. So you go into chapter 25, it says, and it came to pass in the 9th year of his reign in the 10th month. Okay. Let me get this in NLT. Like, all right, this is back in 2 Kings chapter 25, verse 1. It says, so on January 15th, during the 9th year of Zedekiah's reign, King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon led his entire army against Jerusalem. They surrounded the city and built siege ramps against the walls. Jerusalem was kept under siege until the 11th year of King Zedekiah's reign. By July 18th, in the 11th year of Zedekiah's reign, the famine in the city had become very severe, and the last of the food was entirely gone. Then a section of the city wall was broken down, and all the soldiers fled, since the city was surrounded by the Babylonians. They waited for nightfall, then they slipped through the gates between the two walls behind the king's garden and headed toward, the Jordan Valley. But the Babylonian troops chased the king and caught him on the plains of Jericho, for his men had all deserted him and scattered, man. Niggas didn't have no honor or nothing. Left the king vulnerable. You see? And the southern kingdom was a mess at this point, man. Okay? It says they took the king of Babylon at Riblah, where they pronounced judgment upon Zedekiah. They made Zedekiah watch as they slaughtered his sons. Then they gouged out Zedekiah's eyes, bound him in bronze chains, and led him away to Babylon. But Zedekiah rebelled, and they slaughtered all his sons in front of him. So the last thing that he visually saw was all his sons be slaughtered. Then his eyes was gorged out. Okay? It says, that's a hell of a judgment, man. You see? And it all comes from the Lord. Yeah, okay? It says on August 14th of that year, which was the 19th year of King Nebuchadnezzar's reign, Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard, and it says, and an official of Babylon king arrived in Jerusalem. He burnt down the temple of the Lord, the royal palace, and all the house of Jerusalem. He destroyed all the important buildings, in the city. Then he supervised the entire Babylon army as they tore down the walls of Jerusalem on every side, man. So the Lord just allowed Jerusalem to be devastated, to be flattened, man. Okay? He said, Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard, then took as exiles the rest of the people who remained in the city, the defectors who had declared their allegiance to the king of Babylon, and the rest of the population. But the captain of the guard allowed some of the poorest people to stay behind in Judah to care for the vineyards, and the fields. The Babylonians broke up the bronze pillars in the front of the Lord's temple. Then it says the bronze water carts and the great bronze basin, basin called the sea, and they carried all the bronze away to Babylon. They also took all the ash buckets, shovels, lamps, snuffers, dishes, and all the other bronze articles used for making sacrifices at the temple. Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard, also took the incense burners and basins and all the other articles made of pure gold and silver. The weight of the bronze from the two pillars, the sea, and the water carts are too great to be measured, because we know it's a lot, a lot of resources put into that temple. A lot of resources. We went through it, during First Kings. Okay? Hundreds of billions of dollars worth of, gold, silver, and bronze. All right, it says these things had been made for the Lord's temple in the days of King Solomon. Each of the pillars was 27 feet tall. The bronze capital on top of each pillar was 7.5 feet high, and was decorated with a network of bronze pomegranates all the way around. Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard, took with him as prisoners Sariah, the high priest, Zephaniah, the priest of the second rank, and 3 of the chief gatekeepers. And from among the people still hiding in the city, he took an officer who had been in charge of the Judean army 5 of the king's personal advisors, the army commander chief secretary, who was in charge of recruitment, and 60, all right, other citizens. Neber, all right, Zaradan, the capital of the guard, took them all to the king of Babylon at Riblah. It says, and there at Riblah in the land of Hamath, the king of Babylon had them all put to death. So the people of Judah were sent into exile from their land, man. So the Lord cleared Jerusalem out, man. You know, he left a few scavengers, man. Okay, left a few people just to do the vineyards, man. All right. When the Lord spares out, he spares out, man. And this is why Jacob's trouble. The scriptures say it's gonna be a worse time that there's ever been. And there's been some bad times in Israel, man. Okay? And it said, then King Nebuchadnezzar appointed, all right, Galdaiah, son of Ahikam, the grandson of Shaphan, as governor over the people he had left in Judah. When all the army commanders and their men learned that the king of Babylon had appointed Gedaliah as governor, they went to see him at Mizpah. This included Ishmael, son of Nethaniah, Johanan, son of Kariah, Sariah, son of Tehamuth, the Netophathite, and Jezaniah, and son of the Makathite, and all their men. And it says, Gedaliah vowed, all right, to them that the Babylonian officials meant them no harm. Don't be afraid of them. Live in the land and serve the king of Babylon, and all will go well for you, he promised. But in the mid-autumn of that year, Ishmael, son of Nethaniah, the grandson of Elishama, who was one of the royal family, went to Mizpah with 10 men and killed Gedaliah. He also killed all the Judeans and Babylonians who were with, all right, Gedaliah at Mizpah. All right, so he had Nebuchadnezzar had installed a governor because Judah would have no more kings. Okay, so he installed a governor to oversee. Okay, pretty much, you know, he just turned Israel to an agricultural hub. You know, that's why he just left the vineyards. You know, because you will want, you know, those crops. You know, because there was a place where you still get tribute, even though you devastated as a city, as a functioning kingdom. You know, you still will be able to use it, you know, as a vineyard. So Nebuchadnezzar pretty much turned Jerusalem to a vineyard. You know, he left a governor, which pretty much was like you know, a regional manager of today. You know, like in a certain, you know, store or something. You know, but it's pretty much a regional manager he left, you know, to manage the affairs in Judea. But then you had someone from the king's family, all right, from the royal family, slay, you know, the governor that Nebuchadnezzar left in charge. All right, so then all the people of Judea, from the least to the greatest, as well as the army commanders, fled and panicked to Egypt, for they were afraid of what the Babylonians would do to them. So you had people flee into Egypt. Okay, a lot of Jake fled into Egypt, man. Okay, you always had a community of Jake in Egypt, you know. In fact, let's see what they say about that. Let me see. Let's see. Is lights. See what we can give us. All right, just let's look at this real quick, you know, because you always had a community of Jake in Egypt. there was one of Jake Duckoff, was Egypt. All right, even Yahweh Shai, his parents fled to Egypt. Now it says during the Assyrian and Babylonian conquest, all right, between the 8th and 6th centuries BCE, some Jews fled to Egypt to escape war and exile. A community settled in places like Taphanes and Pathros. Jeremiah himself was forcibly taken to Egypt by fleeing Jews after the fall of Jerusalem. Okay, post exile and intertestamental period, large Jewish community in Egypt, especially Alexander. After the exile, many Jews remained or migrated to Egypt voluntarily, especially to Alexander, founded by Alexander the Great in 332 BCE. In the 3rd century BCE, Egypt had one of the largest, all right, Jewish, all right, I would say Jewish, but Israelite communities in the world. All right, the Septuagint, the Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible, was made by Jews in Alexandria, and that's where you get the book of Sirach. Those from Israelites that was in Egypt. Okay, it said Jews were integrated into Egyptian life but maintained their religious identity. Yeah, because you had the book of Sirach. There was 3 generations of Israelites that were living in Egypt, but they stuck to, the ways, of the forefathers. Okay. It said Roman period in New Testament time. Egypt remained a major Israelite center in the 1st century. The Holy Family, all right, Joseph, Mary, and Yahushua fled to Egypt to escape Herod, a possible indicator of existing, all right, Israelite presence. Okay. So, yeah, just wanted to get into that because Jake always had a little duck off, in Egypt. Okay. But getting back to this, all right, closing this out in 2 Kings 25. Okay. So it says in the 37th year of the exile, King Joachim of Judah, all right, evil Murdoch, ascended to the Babylonian throne. He said he was kind to Joachim and released him from prison in April 2nd, all right, of that year. He spoke kindly to Joachim and gave him an higher place than all the other exiled kings in Babylon. He supplied Joachim with new clothes to replace his prison guard and allowed him to dine in the king's presence for the rest of his life. So the Babylonian king, all right, gave him a regular food allowance as long as he lived. And I believe, all right, Jehoiakim, would be the line that will continue. All right. Let's see. I think it was King Jehoiakim. It was his line that you would get Zerubbabel, and through Zerubbabel, you eventually get Yahweh Shai, you know. I think the Lord had to play out that way. Let's see if we can find it. Let me see. But yeah, I think that was Joachim who was the one. Yep. So it was let me see. Yeah, it was Joachim. Yeah, Joachim. I had looked it up a while. It's been a while. So yeah, it was Joachim. All right, through Joachim, you will get eventually Yahweh Shai will come through their line. So the spirit was on, Joachim because he was released, he was able to have families and so it was through Joachim, all right, that you will eventually get, Zerubbabel, okay, and then Yahweh Shai, So I always wonder how that line was reserved, but it was through Joachim. Okay. So Lord will, you brothers, all right, and you sisters edified once again. We'll give all praise and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakadash, and double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples to us younger brothers, and peace and blessings, salutations, hopefully, shalom.